Welcome. And if you are like a lot of people, you have some messy relationships in your life. You might even be wondering why or how you can change them. So, I'm going to give you some information on how you can do that. So, I got you on that. Really, where a lot of this is coming from is from my research on attachment theory, trauma, and relationship structures and orientations. So, if any of that sounds interesting to you, I would encourage you to hang out for the video to learn a little bit more about what I'm going to be doing on this channel. And of course, then obviously come back for more videos. In the meantime, let me tell you about what we're going to do today. All right, so let's get started. So this concept of doing videos and explaining things has been in the back of my mind probably for a little about maybe a year and a half, 2 years now. And really, what I wanted to do was kind of share my experience with my attachment style because there's so little research on it and there's so much variability within my style. However, when I tried to build this on TikTok, really what it came down to is I really didn't want to be on screen. I'm very uncomfortable with video recordings, and so I really just didn't want to kind of do this video with me talking about my experience. But as time has gone on, one of the things that's really come up when I have posted stuff related to these content topics, it's really gotten a lot of attention and people actually do want to know more information. So several friends and family members suggested that I create this YouTube channel and get over my fear and discomfort about being on camera and actually share the information that I know. So it sounded like a great idea, but I really just didn't like the idea of trying to figure out how to do all these videos, try to have all this fancy background, kind of propping myself up to be something that I'm not. I'm not an expert in the field yet. I hope to get there one day, but I'm not there yet. So, really, what it came down to was just kind of taking this leap of faith and showing up authentically and honestly and cluing people into who I am and what I'm doing and why, as well as then sharing that information with you. So, when you go to therapy, your therapist will give you what's called psychoeducation. Now, we're not teaching you everything we know about psychology, we're just giving you the clips that are relevant to what you're going through at the moment. But sometimes you actually need and want more information than what we have time for in a therapy session. So ideally, that's what I wanted to do, was to share some of that psychoeducation with you and keep it really relevant to the topics that I'm researching. And I am going to tell you a little bit more about my research and why these topics are important to me, but just to kind of give you an overview, that's really the purpose of this channel, is just to share information that I've learned, information that I've researched with you so that you can take that information back to your therapist and make some positive changes in your life. Now, of course, not every single topic is going to relate to what's going on in therapy, so you might just want to keep it written down or keep the video for later. So we'll get started with the next part. So before I get into all the content to really give you some information, I'm actually going to sidetrack for a moment and tell you about the name because the name is actually important and it plays into the whole picture and kind of explains how I got to the point that I got to. So first of all, understand that when I was younger, my childhood was eventful. One of my family members has some significant mental health disorders. There was issues with biological father walking out, stepdad adopting me. So there was a lot going on. And one of the things that I actually really enjoyed as a child was writing. Now, I sucked at it. I don't even know how I actually made it through school other than the good graces of teachers that helped me and really made sure that I was learning the concepts because I sucked at grammar. My spelling always felt like it was a struggle. My handwriting was god awful until like the eighth grade. But I had a computer at the time. It was a IBM Tandy, it was the 80s. And so I could actually do writing and I actually really enjoyed writing. And one day I wanted to write a book. So I started with stories and they were, typical middle school, high school girl stuff, and that was perfectly fine. But I never actually anticipated that I would write a book, and I just kind of left it in the back of my mind. It was something that I wanted to do one day. As time went on, I actually was very observant about the world around me, and one of the things that I really noticed was that something could happen to somebody else and it would impact everybody who was in that person's life. And it kind of started to create this illusion of like a spider web to me, where if we're the spider in the center of the web and somebody who's close to us has an event that kind of really rattles their life, we're going to feel some impact from that. And the further you go out with different types of relationships, as those people got impacted, we would feel kind of a shake in our web as well. So really what it came down to was like my mom would have a bad day and it would significantly affect my world. But even when things were happening with friends, there would be some impact to me as well. And I really honed in on this concept that we are all very much interconnected and interdependent on one another. And that was really reinforced when I started teaching middle school science, because we teach this concept of interconnectedness, interdependence when it comes to ecosystems. And I really started to see how we are all part of this system, this web that exists in our world. So that's kind of where this concept of the web comes from, really because of my systemic thinking, my systemic beliefs, which totally plays into my status as a marriage and family therapy student, because while the name is marriage and family therapy, the reality is it's all about the systems that we exist in. So when I talk about a web, when I talk about a network, it's all about the systems that we are in. Now, when it comes to the shadows, well, the shadows are actually a huge theme in my life. And so one of the things I did to deal with the trauma of my past was just shove everything into the shadows. It's in the past. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to deal with it. Just shove it all into the shadows. And when I had this experience several years ago where somebody who I was very much attached to in a very unhealthy way actually ended the relationship, it really shattered me in a way that I couldn't put broken pieces back together. I had to basically take this dust of what I was and build something new and really kind of find myself and find all the parts of me that I had abandoned into those shadows that I was hiding, to really find my authentic self. And it was a difficult process. It was painful. At times it was like hell on earth, but absolutely worth it. And after that event, after that breakup, I actually sat down and wrote my first book. Now, looking back, it was a horrible book and I'm terribly embarrassed by it. But at the time, it was a huge accomplishment for me and it was very vulnerable. And so I didn't want it published under my real name, so I used a pen name. And eventually, as time went on, I did the second book, which was definitely more popular and more interesting. Slow start, but still like the story. And then I tried my hand at a smut book. I am not a smut writer. I don't know how you smut writers do it. It is so uncomfortable for me. Even though I have no issues talking about sex, have no issues talking about smut, writing it was incredibly uncomfortable. But I used this concept of the things that were in the shadow, being this person that was always in the shadow of everything, and played it into that in the book. And actually, I've now written a follow-up to that, and there's a third one sitting on my desk waiting to be proofread. So this concept of putting things into the shadows definitely relates to internal family systems thinking, when you think about those parts being exiled, and I promise I'll explain all of it. Right now, you just need to know that we shove things of our life into the shadows. And when we do that, it actually creates a disruption for us that we're going to have to later go back and clean up if we really want to achieve optimum mental health. So this concept of taking all of these things out of the shadows and moving to a place of serenity and peace was what I wanted to bring to you on this YouTube channel. Basically, how do we transition all of that? Well, some of it comes from psychoeducation, some of it comes from looking within, some of it comes from healing old wounds and new experiences, and all of it ties together. So I just kind of figured this name was absolutely perfectly set up, that we are going to be looking at the web of shadows and serenity, because we want to move from the shadows to the serenity, and we're going to be using this concept of systems and interconnectedness to be able to do that. Now for a little bit about me and what my qualifications or experiences have been that would allow me to bring you this information. So, first and foremost, I am a marriage and family therapy student. I am in my last semester, which means I get to focus entirely on my internship and my research. So, I am so excited, not only that it's the last semester, but that these are my focus areas. So, obviously, because I'm an internship, I do get to work with clients at this stage, but we're not discussing clients in these videos because that's, in my opinion, unethical. But beyond that, it's really about my research. And so, not every graduate master's program requires research, but if you're planning on going on for a PhD, it's a really good idea to have some research background. So, being that I do eventually want to go on to get my PhD, research is crucial for me. It's definitely something I love doing. It's something I have looked forward to since my undergrad. So, having this opportunity is extremely exciting, and I have honed in on my research area topics, and that includes attachment theory, as well as adverse childhood events and relationship structures and orientations, which would be monogamy versus non monogamy and the different subsections of non monogamy. So, kind of interesting how I got to that research area, but I absolutely love it. It's definitely something that keeps me engaged and constantly looking for more information. Now, I do have an undergrad in psychology with a minor in theology, and really from the first moment I took that very first psychology class, I absolutely fell in love with it. And so I pursued an undergrad in psychology with the intentions of going to law school, and then decided to stay in psychology because of how much I loved it. When it comes to religion and theology, I actually find it very fascinating, and not just one type of religion. I find the whole the whole history of religion incredibly interesting as to not only how did it develop, but how does it fit into our systemic world that we exist in. So I think that all of the different religions have fascinating points. They can all have good points that really help us in our life, and they can all have bad points that cause some trauma. So it's really kind of how it has impacted an individual that I find so interesting, as well as humanity and humankind. So this is what I have studied. Those are that section, that passion of my life, being psychology. I also have a Master's of Arts in Teaching and was a professional middle school teacher for 5 years. I have 4 teaching certificates. I really enjoyed teaching math and science. Those were the areas that I spent the most time in. And I love science. I love the research process. Yes, biology, physics, and chemistry are important, but it's really about the research that kind of drew me in and kind of kept my interest there. And I absolutely love teaching. It's definitely one of my passions. I started teaching when I was 15 as a Sunday school teacher, and then when I was 17, I got instructor certifications for CPR, first aid, first responder, lifeguard training, babysitter training. And so I have been teaching most of my life, and I definitely enjoy it. I miss my students. I loved working with them. But as much as teaching is one of my passion, it's not really where I wanted my career to be. I also have an associate's in applied science in paramedicine. I work currently 2 jobs as a paramedic, and I actually started as a volunteer on my ambulance corps when I was 17 and got my EMT certification soon after that, and really have enjoyed my time volunteering, working in this profession. It's it's an interesting profession. It definitely kind of really shapes part of who you are and kind of goes into that whole systemic thinking. But this is another area where I'm passionate, and I am actually a second generation paramedic. My dad was a paramedic, my mom was an EMT, so I grew up in this family, and most of my friends are in emergency services. So it's definitely a part of who I am and part of my passion. So, for a little bit of the non professional stuff about me. So, I am a mom. I do have 2 daughters. One is an adult, one is getting ready to be an adult. I always wanted to have kids. I really wanted a big family, and life has blessed me with 2 daughters who definitely keep me on my toes at all times. I also have 2 dogs. I'm a dog mom. I have a husky who has an attitude 90% of the time, but absolutely loves belly rubs. And I have a Dalmatian. And it has been my dream since I was 10 years old to one day be a dog mom to a Dalmatian. So he is energetic. Now he's getting a little bit older. He's going to turn 7 soon, so he's slowing down. He's also had cartilage cancer, so he's had one of his front paws, one of his front legs amputated to treat that cancer. So we're very fortunate to still have him with us. But he's definitely an adventure all on his own. As I said, I write books as a hobby. I initially did that first book under a pen name because I really wanted to protect myself, in the sense that a lot of the information that I was discussing was very vulnerable. But then also, that first book was based on real events in my life. And since the majority of that book was factual and I was just changing names and places to protect the people who were in that book, I also used that pen name to give them a little bit more protection, so that if you did stumble across this book and knew me or any of the people in my life, you wouldn't be able to identify the people because they were real experiences. The second book had some fact and quite a bit of fiction. And then I went on to write the third one, which was my smut book, which also had some fact, but also had a lot of fiction in it. And when I went to write the fourth one, it was a dream that I had from when I was younger to write a book about almost like a mistaken identity. And with this one, I decided to tackle a very controversial topic of religious intolerance. And it was definitely one of my favorite books. It was all fiction, basically just something I created. And my fifth book, I really tied into a lot of what was going on and a lot of lessons I had learned as a result of another relationship ending, and how that tied into attachment theory. The sixth one is still sitting on my desk waiting to be proofread because I really haven't had the time. And I do have plans for a seventh, but I did plan to keep all of those books under my pen name. Now, I'm not disclosing the pen name here because there's too much of a link of who I am to that pen name. And again, I do want to protect the confidentiality of the people who inspired those characters in the book. So I won't be sharing the name, but if you know me, you know about those books, and that's a part of who I am. My life experiences have brought me to a point where I can actually speak to a lot of what goes on in topics that I research from personal experience. So when I do talk about the ACE scores, it's a 0 to 10 score. What we do know is that 66% of the population has had at least one ACE score. And when we see ACE scores that are 4 and above, we usually see significant mental health issues. And my score is 7 or 8, depending on how you classify one of the events that transpired in my past. So basically, I've had a lot of childhood trauma, and that is kind of my interest in it, is that I don't know how I survived my childhood. By statistics, I shouldn't have survived it. I should be very suicidal, institutionalized, substance use disorders. And while I've had my little dibs here and there, none of it ever took hold. And so I'm told that I am very resilient. And so I am extremely curious about the resiliency factors that help us get past trauma. Beyond those early life experiences that really shaped who I was as a young adult, I got into a string of very unhealthy romantic relationships. There was definitely some abuses in there, some nonviolent sexual assaults in there. So that led me to a point of being even more cautious when it came to relationships. And so over the past 5 years, I've been really working very hard to kind of heal all of that, and to be able to move to a point where if I chose to date again, I could actually be in a very healthy relationship. Life experiences also brought me into the world of consensual non-monogamy and kink. And so under the kink community is where consensual non-monogamy falls. I find that people often think that consensual non-monogamy falls under the LGBTQ community, and it doesn't. Consensual non-monogamy actually does fall under the kink community. And so I got introduced to all of this and just found it so incredibly fascinating, because there are some very big differences in beliefs from consensual non-monogamy to monogamy, and obviously I grew up in the monogamous world. So if you have stayed through this that far, you would probably kind of make some assumptions as to other parts of my identity. I have accepted the fact that I belong in the goth subculture. It's definitely, I see beauty in the darkness, and I embrace that darkness, which completely plays back into this concept of the shadows. And maybe you would anticipate that I would do some some normal gothic things, like I enjoy walks in the cemetery. But outside of that, I also enjoy baking. I enjoy knitting. I've recently started my hand at needlepoint. I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's kind of fun. I like the obstacle course races. I have my Spartan completion t-shirt on because I do enjoy the obstacle course races. I like cars. I like motorcycles. I now finally have a cool car. I don't have a motorcycle yet, but it's on my to-do list, and one day I will actually get there. But that's just a little bit about me to kind of see that there's some life experiences, some things that put me in that category of different. Some call it crazy. I'm totally okay with being called crazy. It's perfectly fine. So I definitely have some mixed interests in all of this and some life experiences to help illustrate the topics that I'm going to be talking about. All right, so before finishing up for today's video, and for context, I'm at home. It's my home office. We're on a weekend. I live in Jersey, where we're getting, a snow apocalypse that's going to be happening at some point over the next 36 hours. But just to understand some boundaries and some disclosures here. First of all, I am not professing to be an expert. I am a marriage and family therapy student who's just sharing information that I've learned as well as my research interests. You should definitely follow up with your own therapist if you have any type of mental health concerns, or you're looking to make some changes in your mental health and trying to improve on it. Also, you should always validate any information that you hear on the internet or social media. I absolutely love TikTok. I love those short videos. They hold my attention. But I've seen some misinformation out there on the same topics. So when you're hearing any information, even from me, you should always validate that information from secondary and tertiary sources that are reliable and known to be valid. As for here, especially if it's going to be on social media, if any of these clips are going to be there, I am going to say this. There's usually a comment section. Please be respectful and accepting and open-minded. You don't have to agree with everything that is said. You don't have to agree with all of the values, but I am going to ask that you be respectful of other people, because even comments that are just discussing your own opinions and values, if they are twisted in a way that could be harmful or hurtful to others, that could really be a big problem for other people. So anything that is hurtful, hateful, harmful to others that I see in the comments, I will be immediately removing, because I just don't want that to happen to somebody else. So it's not trying to silence your opinion, but again, we do need to be respectful of differences of opinions. There's a way that you can share your opinion without it being hurtful, hateful, or harmful to someone else. So once again, verify all the information. Please be respectful in the comments. If you have something that you really need to say that you think is going to be a problem for somebody else, you can send it to me directly. I'm more than capable of handling anything that's not pleasant. And just again, please be very respectful, accepting, and open-minded. If those are not skills or qualities you can possess right now, I would encourage you to go to therapy on your own, and then you can come back to these videos later on. And then if you have any questions, you can always contact me directly. Thank you. Hope you have a good day.